In December 1773, angry colonists in Boston dumped an entire shipment of British tea into the harbor to protest new taxes. This act of defiance, known as the Boston Tea Party, infuriated the king and British leaders. They believed the colonies had grown too rebellious and needed to be punished. In effort to regain control, the Crown passed a series of laws in 1774 that colonists would come to call the Intolerable Acts. To the British, these were the Coercive Acts, meant to coerce or force the colonies back into obedience. These measures closed Boston's port, restricted self-government, and allowed British soldiers more power in the colonies. However, instead of restoring order, the laws pushed the colonies closer together and closer to revolution. The Intolerable Acts consisted of 4 main laws. The first law was the Boston Port Act of 1774. This law shut down Boston Harbor until the colonists paid for the destroyed tea that occurred during the Boston Tea Party. Trade, fishing, and supplies were halted, devastating the city's economy. Thousands of Bostonians lost their jobs and faced food shortages, and many of their businesses were ruined. The second law was the Massachusetts Government Act. The British Parliament, representing the king, took direct control over Massachusetts' colonial government. This meant local colonists no longer made their own decisions. Town meetings could only be held if the royal governor chosen by the king approved them. Many local leaders elected by colonists were replaced with British officials who were loyal to the crown. This angered colonists, who believed they had the right to govern themselves and make their own local laws. The Administration of Justice Act was the third law passed by the British government. It said that British soldiers or officials accused of crimes in the colonies would not be tried in Massachusetts courts. Instead, their trials could be moved to Britain or another colony, where British officials were in charge. Colonists felt this was unfair because it allowed British soldiers and leaders to avoid punishment for their actions, even if they hurt or mistreated colonists. The fourth law was the Quartering Act of 1774. This law required colonists to provide housing and food for British soldiers when demanded. This meant soldiers could stay in homes, inns, or other buildings without the colonists' choice. Many colonists felt this invaded their privacy and showed that the crown was using its army to control them, rather than protect them. The Intolerable Acts had powerful and lasting effects on the American colonies. They caused outrage, brought the colonies together, and led to organized resistance against British rule. The harsh new laws made many colonists furious. They saw the British government as unfair and abusive, believing the king and parliament wanted to take away their freedom and self-government. The acts led to unification among the colonies. Many colonists realized that what happened to Massachusetts could happen to them too. The colonists began to see that they needed to stand together to protect their shared rights and freedoms, or more and harsher laws would be imposed on them. In 1774, leaders from 12 colonies met in Philadelphia for the First Continental Congress to organize resistance against British rule. Inspired by earlier protest groups like the Sons of Liberty, they worked together to defend colonial rights. The delegates agreed to support Massachusetts, stop buying British goods, and demand that Parliament end the unfair laws. This meeting became one of the first major steps toward colonial unity and national resistance. Instead of restoring order, the Intolerable Acts united the colonies and became a rallying cry for independence. When British troops clashed with colonial militias at Lexington and Concord in April 1775, the revolution Britain had hoped to prevent was sparked. igniting the American Revolution.